It's another edition of the Wrap Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell, presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. Before we get going, just give us 30 seconds. A reminder, subscribe to our content, exclusive year-round Padres content by hitting that button down below. Like our videos as well. Follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. We're going to get to the latest with Bruce Bochy, but first, this reminder about Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. If you're shopping for auto, home, renters, life insurance here in San Diego, there's only one place to turn, and that's to our buddy Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. He's a San Diegan. He's got over a decade of experience helping people like us find the perfect insurance products. He's a lifelong San Diegan. He lives and dies in every pitch like you and I do. Support the show. Click the link down below in the description. You can get Mark's website. Let him know how he can help your family with their insurance needs.
Yeah, if you have any insurance needs, any questions you want to ask, super easy and simple to get a hold of him. You can just email him at mnimitz@farmersagent.com. That's mnimitz@farmersagent.com.
Today's topic on the wrap-up show: can the Padres talk Bruce Bochy into managing again? Here's what Bruce said just recently.
Can the Padres really talk you into being a field general again?
You know what? I haven't talked to anybody. I'm being honest. I've said, listen, you don't rule out anything. To never say never thing, but I've enjoyed what I've been doing. You have to, I think, listen, maybe if something comes along at some point in time, whether this year, next year, or whatever. But I have not been pursuing anything. I've been spending time with the family, spending time with helping, hopefully, the Giants, and I've enjoyed it.
So he's not ruling anything out, Jim. I mean, it's at least the door's open. He's not saying, yeah, I'm waiting for the phone call I have to manage in 2022. But at the very least, the door's open. So the question today: would Bochy want to manage the Padres if given the opportunity? We'd love to hear from you. Reply in the comments section down below. Is it a realistic opportunity at this point or not, do you think?
I think that anything's a realistic opportunity. It's realistic that he could manage again. I think it's realistic that he could manage the Padres. Do I think that will happen, though? At this point in time, I don't. And there's just a lot of factors to why I don't think Bruce Bochy is going to be the manager of the Padres next year. Clearly, he is my first choice. I think he's a lot of people's first choice. I think that he is the perfect hire. Like, if you're looking for that combination of not only big splash, but perfect combination of leadership, perfect combination of bringing into that clubhouse respect, perfect combination with, experience. he's got a little experience. 3 World Series, run to 4, not bad. And I think he, knows exactly what to do to lead a team through a full season. And that's the problem with Jace Tingler, is he did not know how to lead a team through an entire 162 game year, and it completely crumbled and blew up on him, within the first 4 months of the year. So yeah, I think he is my number one choice, but I don't think the Padres are going to want to go that route. And I say that because I don't think the relationship that Preller and Bochy would have would be a good one. I just don't see that as like a good fit, Like, I don't see them working well together. And I'm not saying that they like hate each other or anything. I think they probably know each other, super cordial. Like, you talk to them, they like, oh yeah, I like AJ. Like, oh yeah, I like Bruce, he's a great guy. But as far as like working together, working with each other for a full 162 game season in the way that we know Preller operates, and we know the way that Bruce Bochy would want to operate, I don't think that working relationship would go well, even though I think he's the perfect hire for this team.
Here's the thing. I agree with everything you said. I will say this: if AJ Preller is willing to relinquish some of that day-to-day control and give it to Bruce Bochy and his staff, clearly Bochy would have to hire his staff. This isn't going to be AJ Preller's staff. It has to be Bochy's.
Yeah.
And then from an analytical perspective, you're going to have to allow Bruce Bochy to have final say on everything. I mean, it would have to be that type of situation. Like, he's not going to come here and bend to the expectations, I think, of the organization. He's going to be the manager he's been, whether it's in San Diego or San Francisco. I feel like if the stars were aligned and if they gave him what he asked for and were willing to really do that, maybe you could twist his arm. And the reason I say that is obviously the home and residing in San Diego for as long as he's resided here. He played for the club. He managed for the club. He took him to a World Series. He's left San Francisco. The roster is an intriguing one at the very least. Now, I know it's 30 games worse than the Giants and the Dodgers. I do know that. So it's not an easy job. It's not. But it's not the roster that was here in 2019 or 2017 or 2015. So there's some things to like. It's going to start with AJ Preller relinquishing some amount, if not all control, or a lot of control, at least, in-game decisions, analytics, how Bruce Bochy is going to use them, how his field staff is going to use them. I just think he didn't need to give more of that to the bench and less of that coming from the front office. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but by the way, if he's unwilling to do that for Bruce Bochy, is he going to be unwilling to do that for veteran managers in general? Like, if you're a veteran manager and you're used to managing a certain way, are you going to want to work in this situation regardless? If you're Buck Showalter or Ron Washington, we've heard from Ron Washington, he does want to manage here. Or any of these guys, are they really going to want to manage under AJ Preller if they don't have the control they're used to having?
Well, here's the thing about Bruce Bochy that is different from every other candidate out there that we've seen. None of them have the resume as Bruce Bochy.
Mhm.
None of them have the, hey, I won 3 World Series. None of them have that to where they can go to AJ Preller and say, dude, I know what I'm doing. I've done it before. Yes, Ron Washington's made to a World Series, but he didn't win it 2 times. Didn't win it. What other names are out there? There's really nothing. I mean, Farrell, maybe you could say, because
Showalter
he won a World Series. Showalter has not won a World Series.
Ron
John
Reineke
Gibbons,
has managed in postseasons, right? I mean, Jeff
but
Bannister, I'm not sure if he managed in postseasons or not.
But my point is, none of them have what Bruce Bochy has. And so
Yep.
what you just said about, can AJ Preller just kind of relinquish control over to Bruce Bochy? We've talked about this. That dude's not changing. AJ Preller's not changing. And if you've heard him recently on with Darren, and if you've heard him anywhere else, does that sound like a guy who's willing to give up control of this team, who's willing to bring in someone else and let them just do their thing, right? Just let them go. I don't see it. I think he's a guy who's
if there's one person to do that for, right? I'm with you, but it's like, do you want to be the general manager of this club for the next decade or not? And you're not going to get to hire multiple managers. A lot of people believe. Dennis Lynn said that as recently as yesterday, that you got to operate, if you're AJ Preller, under the expectation this is the final manager you're going to hire, unless it goes well and the manager retires. Like, if Ron Washington comes in here or Bruce Bochy comes in, they manage for 3 years, get to a World Series or an NLCS and retire.
Right.
Well, that's a completely different conversation. But you can't have a failure. You can't fire your manager at any point over the next 2 or 3 years and expect to hire another manager. But I'm with you. AJ Preller has been unwilling. It appears from the outside and what he says publicly to really bend his ways. I just wonder if there's one person he'd be willing to bend to, would it be the Hall of Fame caliber manager in Bruce Bochy? And how could you not be willing to listen and really question what you're doing and cede some of that control to someone with his experience and success?
And what makes this whole thing crazy is that they need a manager and the perfect manager's out there. But it just feels like to me and to a lot of people that it's not going to happen because of AJ Preller. And that is where this whole problem is you have a guy out there who is a perfect candidate, the perfect hire, would excite the fan base, control that clubhouse. Every single player in that clubhouse would respect him. He's been there 3 times, 4 times he's been there actually, 3 times he's won it. But the problem again, does Bochy want to work with Preller? And does Preller want to give up power to Bruce Bochy? Does Preller want to say, you know what, Boch, go hire your entire staff. Go do everything in game. Put the lineups together how you want the lineups together. It's all yours. Do you really see Preller doing that? Because I don't see him doing any of that. And I still think and feel like he might be leaning towards another guy who isn't a yes man, but a guy that he would not be doing that for.
So you're basically saying, and I tend to agree, but you're ruling out a number of candidates then, like because
No,
if
I'm not ruling out a number of
well,
candidates. No,
but Buck Showalter's not going to want to come in and have AJ Preller hire his staff. And by the way, Dennis Lynn also wrote that he believes the next manager will have more of a say in hiring their staff. Like all these guys, like Brad Ausmus or John Gibbons. I mean, these aren't first time managers. They're not just going to come in just because they need a job. I mean, you could argue
here's
maybe
here's the thing with Bochy that none of those guys have. Bochy doesn't have to prove anything to anybody, right? He doesn't have to do this. He doesn't have to manage. Buck Showalter, I know he doesn't have to manage either, but still, if he comes back, he's going to have to prove that he can win the big games, and he has to prove that he can take a team to a World Series. If Ron Washington comes back, he's going to have to prove that he can get over the hump and win a World Series because he's been there twice and he's lost both times. Like, that's the thing with Bochy that none of these other guys have, is that Boch has zero to prove to anybody in that Padres organization, to the outside world. He's a Hall of Fame manager right now. None of the other candidates are Hall of Fame managers. Not even close.
I'm 100% with you, and that kind of goes back to the initial point of like, why do you only take it if the stars align, and the
Right.
stars align when you've got a general manager that would be completely in your corner, and you have an owner that wants, it starts with the owner. I would imagine Peter Seidler would have an extreme interest in a Bruce Bochy, and then it goes to the
Better.
front office, obviously, with AJ Preller. But from Bruce Bochy's perspective, you don't have to take this job. And
No.
by the way, if you want to manage again in 2 years, you don't know who the general manager of the Padres is going to be in
Right.
2024.
You can wait this thing out.
And you're only 66 years of age. Now, with these other candidates, Bob Nightingale put out a list yesterday that was Padres are still finalizing a list, but names being internally discussed include Bochy, Showalter. Bannister, by the way, did win a division twice with the Rangers. He never won a postseason series, but won a division twice. John Gibbons, Ron Renicky, who's well respected. John Farrell, who won a World Series, by the way. Yeah, there's a World Series winning manager, right? John Farrell.
Yeah, I mentioned John Farrell.
Okay, but I mean, he
Red
is
Sox.
Okay. Did you mention the fact that he won a World Series? I forgot.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, my bad. And Brad Ausmus.
Good listen.
Brad Ausmus obviously hasn't won anything, but was a well-respected former player and is managed now in multiple spots. So, that's your list. I mean, it's Bruce Bochy and everyone else, obviously. I will say, to your point, I mean, Showalter's won a zillion games. Farrell, again, has won a World Series. It's not like it's not like if you don't land Bruce Bochy, there's nobody that's ever had success at the major league level. There's a number of guys that have had success.
Right. And that goes back to like, if Aaron Boone becomes available, then he becomes one of my top targets. I think if you bring in a veteran manager, then you better have like a succession plan in place. You better have that next guy waiting, ready to go, because you're not going to count on Ron Washington managing this team for a decade. I feel like maybe 3, 4, 5 years at the most, but you better have that like succession plan in place, ready to go if you hire a Ron Washington or a Bruce Bochy, because they're not going to be here for a decade plus. I think there are good candidates, just not a lot, and like that's where I think this organization and this team runs into problems with the hiring process. Is there's good coaches and good managers out there, but there's no manager besides Bruce Bochy, and maybe you could throw Aaron Boone in there as far as like former managers go. That is a slam dunk hire. And you could maybe say, yeah, there's players out there that, had great playing careers, like Carlos Beltran. He got hired as the Mets manager, but then he had to resign because of the Astros thing.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have a problem with that if he came back to manage, because Alex Cora and AJ Hinch are managing right now, and they were a part of that as well. So if you're going to shun Carlos Beltran, then you got to do it to those guys too. And they haven't done that. So Carlos Beltran, I think, maybe in the mix, and he's definitely had a great playing career.
Sure.
Does Luis Rojas excite you? The same thing happened in New York as in San Diego.
I mean, potentially on someone's staff. I think Luis
Yeah.
Rojas could be really beneficial, like on Aaron Boone's staff, on
Absolutely.
I mean, on any Bruce Bochy's staff. I mean, could he be the manager in waiting? I think that there's some value potentially in that. Here's the problem: the reason I'm hiring someone with managerial experience,
Mhm.
not just lengthy playing experience, is because I have to win now. I
Right.
mean, I have to. I have to win in 2022. I can't even be talking about 2023 at this point. It can't be 84 and 78 in 2022, and you're 4 games out of a playoff spot or 6 games out. It just can't. I mean, this team has to vie at the very least for a postseason spot. I don't know what it has to do in the postseason. We can argue that throughout 2022, but it's got to get there. And you can't have hiccups. You can't have a lack of experience hurt your club on the field, in my opinion. So I'm not saying you have to hire a 66-year-old former manager, but I am saying it would be advantageous to hire someone that has managed previously. And that's something Luis Rojas has done. And, that might be to his advantage or the club's advantage. I'm not saying Luis Rojas is the number one target. I don't think he is, but the beauty of a Rojas or an Aaron Boone is they're kind of in the middle ground, right? They've managed, but they haven't managed for 25 years. So maybe they're moldable. Maybe they can work with the front office. They're very acutely aware of the role that analytics plays in modern baseball. So guys like that, I feel like they're going to, settle's the wrong word, but I think they're not going to go with the first-time manager. I don't think they're going to go with the veteran manager with multiple stops and has managed for 20 years. I think they're going to go with the in-between guy.
Yeah, and we have not seen their list yet. Kevin AC said that they're still finalizing it, and it could become final at the end of this week or, towards the beginning of next week. So it's going to be interesting to see what other names, if any other names, show up as far as, hey, this guy just interviewed with the Padres. Like, oh, that's interesting. That's a guy we haven't talked about before. So that's when I think we'll know more about what direction this organization and AJ Preller want to go. If you start seeing Buck Showalter and John Gibbons and Farrell and, Ron Washington all have interviewed with the Padres, then you go, okay, they're going experience route. They're going former manager route. That's what they're doing. But if you start seeing guys like, I don't know, Beltran or even like a Mark Kotze or AJ Ellis getting interviews, Mark Loretta, like guys, former players getting interviews, and you're like, okay, that we know what the route AJ Preller wants to go is. He wants to go the former player route, but he wants to go the former player route with experience as far as playing career goes. Like this guy had a really good playing career. He might not have any manager experience, but he's been in the trenches for a long time as a player. So transitioning to a manager, keeping that clubhouse in check, that is something I think AJ Preller might view as easy.
It can't rule anything. I mean, you can't rule anything out with Preller. I mean, it could be
No.
a third consecutive inexperienced manager.
Yeah,
That's a possibility. Or it could be a veteran guy. I mean, Ron Washington was a finalist, or it could be someone in between. Is it Bochy or bust for you? You can reply down below in that comment section. Again, if you're looking for year-round Padres content, and we're covering the entirety of this managerial search exclusively on this YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button down below. If you like these videos, give us a thumbs up. Follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. You've been watching The Wrap-Up Show, presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance.